Hi everybody and welcome back to chapter 11 of The Snail Patrol by Krista Lacey. That afternoon the weather was glorious, just the sort of day for a poddle down the crescent. Shortly after a lunch of boiled beans and cabbage, fresh cabbage, unchewed by snails, George stepped out for his Sunday walk. He swept along at a good brisk pace, swinging his stick as if conducting the bird song and whistling an aged Scottish ballad. In a matter of minutes he was clear of the houses and striding down the path that rounded the allotments. He took a deep, snorty breath. Peace and quiet. You couldn't beat it. No noise, no fuss, and definitely no snails. But there was Darren Winterburn. He came shooting along the allotment path, waving and flapping as if his hair was on fire. George scowled and drilled his stick into the ground. For the last 2 days he'd managed to avoid any contact with the boy. The scamp was going to badger him for money, no doubt. But Darren had other things on his mind. "Did you see it?" he panted, skidding to a halt in front of George. George looked around. There wasn't so much as a leaf falling. "I think it might be hiding in the spinney," Darren puffed, pointing at a distant clump of trees. George Macduff cupped a hand across his eyes. There was nothing but scrub from the path to the spinney. "What in blazes are you talking of, laddie?" "The snail!" Darren shouted. "The cabbage buster!" Mr. Macduff hopped back a pace. "I saw it," said Darren. "At least I think I saw it. It wasn't as big as the Loch Ness Monster, but I could see its shell curling out of the grass. It was an ogreous creature, Mr. Macduff. I bet it's miles away by now." George Macduff straightened up very slowly. "Aye, it probably is," he agreed. "I expect it sprouted wings and flew." He nearly spat the last word into Darren's face. "You'll have to do better to fool Macduff. I wasn't born in a haystack, you know." Darren put on his best hurt look. "I wasn't trying to fool you, Mr. Macduff." Mr. Macduff shook his stick at the boy. "It's a crafty thieving trick," he said. "You want me to give you £50? All for a creature that doesn't exist." Which was just what Darren had expected to hear. "But you told me there was a cabbage buster," he argued. George gritted his teeth and said something fusty under his breath. "If there isn't, I want my money," Darren pressed. He held his hand out. £21.50, please." "No," said George. "Right," thought Darren. "You asked for it." It was time to put Operation Slime into action. "Ugh, what's that?" He pointed downwards. George grunted and turned around. There on the ground was a terrible sight. Weaving a ragged path through the grass was a thick, glistening, silvery green trail. "Nay," George muttered. "It cannae be." He looked towards the spinney and his teeth began to chatter. "Wow!" exclaimed Darren, coming to crouch by the trail. "So it's true. I did see a cabbage buster. I wonder what it's doing round here. Perhaps it comes to feed on the allotments. I can't see many cabbages growing. Perhaps it's already had them." There was a hasty scrabbling of feet on the path. Darren pretended not to hear. "I hope it doesn't go looking for some in your back garden, Mr. Macduff." Darren paused and looked over his shoulder. The gangly figure of George Macduff was already just a dwindling shape in the distance. "Heh, got you," Darren laughed, licking his finger and ticking the air. He sidled across to an old tree stump and waited until George was completely out of sight. "Darren, Darren," he chanted cockily and picked up his empty bucket of slime. And that's chapter 11. Chapter 12, coming soon. Bye-bye now.